Hello friends, I'm George, the nice smelling gentleman. Welcome back to the channel guys, I hope that all of you are doing well. Today I got delivered 3 new fragrances for my collection and 2 of them have been very heavily recommended by you, my viewers. The first one comes from the house of Armaf and it's called Armaf Takim Uomo Roso, and this is supposedly a great clone of Paco Rabanne's Invictus Victory Elixir. The second one is from Lattafa and it's called Zanzibar, and it's been very heavily hyped up in the past few months, so I wanted to see what the hype is all about. And the third one also comes from the house of Lattafa and it's called Jasoor. So today I'm going to unbox them and try them for the first time. I'm going to start off by checking out the 2 Lattafa fragrances, and I'm going to start with the hyped up beast, that is the Lattafa Asad. So let's unbox this one first. The packaging is very similar to what you get with the original Lattafa Asad. I think the bottle design is also pretty similar, although the theme here is sort of a dark blue color, and yes, the bottle is pretty much identical to the OG Assad, as you can see them side by side. Okay, let's check out the sprayer. Although something inside here, don't know if you can hear that, but seems to be wobbling around a little bit. Let's see what the sprayer is like. It's a very interesting sprayer, has a sort of a wide distribution. Now onto the scent of this fragrance. It feels quite sweet in the opening, but at the same time also quite spicy. There's definitely something like a black pepper note in here, and a lot of sort of a coconut note, something coconutty in the opening of this fragrance. There's some sweetness, maybe vanilla and ambery sweetness as well, but at the same time feels a little bit salty and kind of aquatic. It's an interesting scent. I want to try this one on skin as well. Again, a sprayer is pretty interesting. Okay, on skin it's definitely slightly different. On skin it feels a little bit more salty and a little bit more peppery in the opening. Not as sweet as I get on a paper, a paper strip. But there's still quite a lot of coconut sweetness, a lot of vanilla sweetness, but there's a lot of saltiness and a lot of spiciness, sort of pepperness from that black pepper note that this fragrance has, I think. It's definitely a very interesting fragrance. Also feels kind of milky in a way, at least on skin. Definitely an interesting scent. I'll give it some time to settle down, and then I'll come back to check out the dry down of Asad Zanzibar from Lattafa. The second one that I'm going to try out, again from the house of Lattafa, is called Jasoor. Now I'm not sure if this is cloning something, but I'm going to check it out and tell you if it reminds me of something. It's an interesting packaging. Looks like you have a secondary box of sorts inside. Okay, and this is how the bottle looks. It has a very interesting, very flashy and loud design, let's go with that. The cap, okay, that's interesting. Looks like a lipstick to be honest, like a bigger model of a lipstick. I can't say that I'm a huge fan of the bottle design, to be honest, but let's see what this smells like. The sprayer here seems to be a little bit more ordinary compared to the Asad Zanzibar. And now onto the scent of this fragrance. The opening is quite bright and fresh and sweet at the same time. There's definitely a fruity note, an apple note, something like a green apple note in here. There's some added freshness from something citrusy, maybe a bergamot note. There is a lavender note in here for sure. There's a bit of spiciness from something like a cardamom note. Feels kind of green, feels fruity, sweet and fresh at the same time. But there's also some sort of a sweet, slightly darker undertone to the opening of this fragrance. Seems to be an interesting scent, and I Can't say that I'm liking it 100%, but it's not one of those fragrances that I would fall in love immediately after trying it, but it's not a bad scent for sure. Again, I'll give it some time to settle down and I'll come back to check out the dry down of Jasoor. And now let's check out the Armaf Takim Uomo Roso. The bottle has the same very tacky, and I can even say ugly design of all other Takim, all other fragrances that are member of the Tak line of scents from the house of Armaf. And the caps here seems to be also magnetic, which is an interesting touch, but the magnets are not strong enough to support the bottle itself. And yeah, again, another very ugly bottle design from Armaf, but that's nothing new. I've pretty much come to expect that when it comes to Armaf scents. The sprayer seems to be pretty good right from the get-go. And yes, this is a clone of Invictus Victory Elixir for sure. It opens up again very sweet like the original scent. You get lots of ambery, vanillic sweetness, maybe a hint of coconut sweetness as well in here. But there's something slightly fresh. Want to try this one on skin as well, so let's check out how it smells on skin. Sprayer is actually pretty good though. Puts at least puts a big amount of juice out. And yeah, the opening here has quite a lot of freshness actually, and in fact I pick up something like a mint note in the opening of this fragrance, which is pretty strong and is not present in the original scent. And the opening here kind of reminds me of Scandal pour Homme from Jean-Paul Gaultier, as well as, you know, being very close to Invictus Victory Elixir. It's quite sweet, but at the same time quite fresh. Maybe there's something like a bergamot note in here, but there's definitely a mint note in the opening of this fragrance, which adds an interesting dimension to the opening of Takim Uomo Roso. Okay, I'll give it about 1 hour to settle down and I'll come back to check out the dry down of this one as well. So about 1 hour has passed since I tried all 3 fragrances, and I'm going to go over the dry down of each and every one of them in the same order as I began. And I'm going to start with Asad Zanzibar from Lattafa. And the dry down is somewhat different compared to the opening. The opening felt a little bit lactonic, a little bit too milky for my taste, and to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of the opening of this fragrance. The dry down seems to be a little bit better. The opening was kind of harsh and synthetic as well. The dry down has settled a little bit, and now on the dry down I pick up quite a lot of vanillic and ambery sweetness with a hint of incense, and that coconut note from the opening is still present on the dry down. The spiciness from the opening has completely gone away. Maybe there's a hint of that salty note as well, and also I still pick up a sort of a milky sort of vibe out of this one on the dry down, but it's not as strong as it was in the opening. Now, to be honest, I've never smelled something that's close to Asad Zanzibar from Lattafa, and so far I think this is an original Lattafa creation. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the scent, at least for the moment. I'll give it some time to settle down. I'll give it at least a few proper wears. This is definitely a scent that's more orientated towards the warmer months of the year, so you know, right now is the right time to wear this one. So I'll give it some proper wearings and I'll do a full review of Asad Zanzibar. But to be honest, I can't say that I see what the hype about this fragrance is, at least for the moment. Now onto the dry down of Lattafa Jasoor. Again, this one I wasn't a very huge fan of the opening of this one. The dry down seems to be a little bit better. The opening was kind of synthetic and slightly harsh. The dry down is a little bit better. It becomes a little bit less fruity in the dry down. On the dry down you get introduced to some more notes like maybe a hint of leather, maybe a hint of a sort of a grassy, earthy vetiver as well. Maybe a hint of a tonka bean sweetness as well, which adds a bit of a sort of powderness to this one. It's an aromatic, you know, fruity, slightly sweet, slightly leathery and grassy kind of, you know, fragrance. It's kind of reminiscent to something like a Valentino Uomo Born in Roma Coral Fantasy, I think was the full name of the original fragrance. Maybe not a straight up clone of that one, but more of a twist. It's a pretty likable scent that can probably work all year round. But again, I'm not a huge fan of the original fragrance, and I can't say that I'm a huge fan of Jasoor, at least for the moment. Again, I'll give it some time to settle down, a few weeks. I'll give it some proper wearings, and I'll do a full review of Jasoor from Lattafa. And onto the dry down of Armaf's Uomo Roso. This being a clone of Paco Rabanne's Invictus Victory Elixir. And it's a pretty decent clone of a Victory Elixir. The opening to my nose felt a little bit fresher, a little bit more citrusy, and had definitely sort of a minty freshness as well. And the dry down, this still remains a little bit fresher compared to the original fragrance, slightly less sweet, but on the dry down it becomes really close to the original fragrance. And maybe like a little bit more of unwearable, a little bit more of a more versatile version of the original scent, because of the amount of freshness that you get out of Takim, because the original scent is just too sweet to be worn in warm weather, at least in my opinion. This feels like a slightly lighter and quite a bit fresher, mintier take on the original DNA. And it's definitely a very likable fragrance that probably will get you a lot of compliments. What's left is to test the performance of all three, and especially Takim Uomo Roso, because some people have reported this to have a very good performance, and I'm curious to test this one out. But so far I like Takim Uomo Roso quite a lot, and out of the three that I just tried today for the first time, I think this is my favorite. And so guys, in today's video I unboxed and tried for the first time 3 new scents for my collection. 2 of them came from the house of Lattafa, Lattafa Asad and Lattafa Jasoor, and the third one from the house of Armaf, and it's called Uomo Roso, Takim Uomo Roso. And I think that the Armaf fragrance is actually the one that I like most out of the 3. I hope that you found this video interesting. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me in the next one. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.